Hey guys, it's Nichole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. You can support this podcast by subscribing, leaving a positive review, and screenshot and sharing on social media. Hey, Lo.
Hi, friend. I'm so happy to be here.
Guys, this is the first live in-person podcast recording that I've done in 2021. So you're special today.
IRL.
Here for it. So I'm so excited to have Lo. She's a business consultant and mindset coach. And I just feel like we're going to have just the juiciest conversation today. And I can't wait to share all of the goodness with you guys. But I want to let people get to know you. Tell them a little bit about who you are.
Oh boy. So I'm just a lover of life. If I could sum me up, I think some of these topics are going to come out, but I think my goal in life is literally just to heal myself and to become the best version of me and to just enjoy as much as possible and help others, right? But I think everything starts with healing ourselves and helping ourselves, and then we can be of greater service to others. But if we're not starting with ourselves, then it's really hard to act in a way that's of true, there's a word I'm looking for, not goodness, but you don't know when you're there's no ulterior motives, right?
Yeah.
And you're not coming from a place of hurt or shame or guilt. Oh, that's a big one.
Yes.
A lot of people do things because of guilt. So I've been on an incredible journey in my life, I think, and in the business sense too. I started off at GE, which is a huge old corporation in America.
Yeah.
And then I worked for some startups, did some biotech stuff, did some skincare, started my own consulting, worked for another skincare wellness company. And now I'm consulting again and just finished season 1 of a show. So I became a producer, and that's a very quick summary.
I love this because I think that you're talking about the motivation of why people do things. And I think that sometimes, and especially I've noticed this coming from a small town, that you can kind of feel trapped in moving forward and kind of identified by what you're doing and have a really difficult time being able to bounce around and being able to do what you feel called to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a struggle for a lot of people to give themselves the flexibility in their personality and identity.
Ooh, wow. I love how you phrased that. I think that is crucial, to be able to feel like I can do this. First of all, anyone can make a change, shift, make a different decision every day. But it's scary. And I think a lot of people are held back by that fear of the unknown, fear of what will people think. There's a whole
Absolutely.
laundry list of things people can come up with. But I think if you have the impulse, just do it. Like Nike said.
Nike always be saying that.
Right. But if you have the impulse, try it. What is the worst that's going to happen? You fail? What does that even mean? What is failure? I almost said hate, and I don't like using that word.
Yeah.
I really don't there's so many words in our society that are used to really hold us back. And it's you can't mess up. Don't fail, right? Think of being a kid and playing sports. I know we both played sports.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's no, failure is actually how you learn. Why are we not encouraging this? And so I think when you can shift that from thinking, oh, what if I fail? Or what if I'm embarrassed? I don't laugh at yourself. It's probably going to be funny. Maybe
Yes.
In that moment it feels embarrassing, or just embrace it. Now I'm just I'm fall or run into something and I just laugh immediately. And there's bigger things, right, too, that people are scared of failing at work or whatever. But I think, and Brene Brown says this, not letting people fail is the opposite of allowing creativity in. And I think we have to just embrace this and be ooh, what did you learn today? What did you fail at today?
Absolutely. I love this conversation because I feel like those are the hard things that people don't like to talk about. And I think in like the self-help world, like we're always talking about like, yeah, fail, but the experience of it is a lot less fun. It's very scary. How do you tap into that place within you? Like, what was your process to move into a place of almost being a little fearless and giving yourself wiggle room and permission to try and to do things and to fail?
Yeah. So that's a really awesome question. And I love this story because it starts with, it's actually funny. My best friend was just in town and we were looking back at some old like videos and stuff we had from college, like late college.
Yeah.
And then after college, I was just in a rut and I didn't know what was wrong. I was like, something is just off. I feel, depressed. I didn't know that at the time, but I was definitely in a depression. And I think I took the step to get a life coach, and then I ended up getting my coaching certification or training rather. And that's a whole nother story. But going to that coach, and she was also a psychotherapist, which was very helpful, but she was able to help me just see like, oh, here's all the things, like reflect back of what's going on. And there were things I wanted to do. And it started off as more of like a career thing. And then it became more of a, oh, it's a me thing. But coming back to your question of the failure. So as I started to work with her, it was like, there's things I wanted to do in town and I didn't necessarily have, it was a smaller town at the time. And, now we're in Charlotte.
Yes.
But at that time, there was things I wanted to do and I didn't necessarily know anyone to go to with the things.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I really want to go to this thing. And it's either I go alone or I don't go. And I really want to go.
Right.
So I'm just going to go. And I kind of I was like, okay, it's hard, right? Because it's like over 10 years ago. So I'm like trying to remember what it was like. But it was like, I know this is going to be awkward. And I almost embraced that. I was like, okay, I know this might be a little awkward. I might feel a little uncomfortable because I'm alone. I might have to talk to people. And it was fine. And I survived and I made it through. I was like, I'm not going to die, right? There's so few consequences out there that are actually like of merit, like
absolutely.
Most of the times it's in our head. All of the fear is in our head. And so I did it. And then I remember I moved to Denver, Colorado, and I did the same thing. I was like, I don't know many people here. I just want to go to these events because they're so cool. And I ended up meeting a lot of amazing people.
When you just have that bubbly personality, well, I'm sure people like flock to you. But what's funny is like making yourself uncomfortable, even in like physically going places, is so vital to giving yourself the freedom to exist as you are. Mm-hmm. When I first moved here, I joined an acting class and it was like an improv class. It was so fun. COVID obviously put a wrap on that one, but I was so uncomfortable that I would get anxious before going to the class because I knew I was going to be uncomfortable while I was there. But every time I went and every time I, put myself in a position to get just humiliated or feel humiliated or feel like I don't know what I'm doing, like, I think there's so much gold to that because I found myself feeling more free to be fully myself everywhere else. Mm-hmm. And I think that part of the gem of becoming yourself is creating self-awareness. And part of the self-awareness comes from giving yourself permission to mess up, to give yourself permission to get humiliated, to give yourself permission to fail, and to decide it doesn't have to mean anything about who you are, and to decide it doesn't have to mean anything about where you're going and what you can have, and that it doesn't even have to come with you. And I think there's such beautiful flexibility in giving yourself that permission to mess up, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh. There's such beautiful flexibility. And I think that makes us stronger, right? Or like you said, it allows you to create yourself, and it's not tied to your self-worth or any other measure, right? Self-love, self-worth, or what you can do in the future. Yeah. I just think it's I don't know. I think it's fun now. And it's like we have to constantly do it, edge yourself, right? Because then I'm sure over time you got a little comfortable in that class, more comfortable, let's say.
Yes.
And then it's, as it progresses, you're like, okay, like what's the next thing? And I've noticed there's periods in my life that I've like pushed forward, gotten uncomfortable, and then I'm like, oh, okay, like I can do this now. And then I'm like, okay, I need to make myself uncomfortable again. I've been comfortable for too long, and you get complacent. And one thing that I don't know if I was reading it or listening to it recently, that there's that phrase of we only use 10% of our brains, which is actually not true. But back when they were doing research at the time, this is like, I don't know, sometime in the 50s or 60s, perhaps, that they were like, oh, the neurons in your brain, and they make up like 10% of your brain. Right. But now we found there's other things that connect our brain. And I'm not a scientist or anything, or neurologist, but so I'm sharing from what I can speak in a normal person's language.
We appreciate that, yes.
But what they did say is that over time, we create patterns in our brain. And so if you're doing the same stuff every day, if you're very comfortable doing those things, those patterns just get ingrained. So doing something different helps create new connections in your brain. And so it's super important to every day make sure you're doing something different. So you're creating more connections. And that's how you expand the power of your brain and your ability to do more things. But it's taking that step of, okay, I'm going to do something different right now. Even if it's trying something different, like trying food that's different.
Absolutely.
Or talking to someone that you wouldn't normally talk to, or taking a different route, or so many things. I mean, just anything little that can be different.
I love that you break it down to little, because even when I was doing traditional therapy and we were working with, let's say, alcoholic population, we would say if you typically have beer, drink wine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to cut that right off, obviously, but change something. If you drink in the kitchen, drink in the living room. Like if we're going to start changing habits, we can do them subtly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be this big drop off or cut off. It can just be small changes to make yourself uncomfortable and not enjoy it in the same way that your pattern is used to.
Right.
So
right.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's opening up possibilities of, well, just because, maybe we had an experience with like food, for example, that I just didn't like that when I was a kid. I was the pickiest. I was the weird child in a great way. And I love that now, but I would only eat like cereal and chicken fingers and, like a PB&J, but not with normal jelly, with like green apple mint jelly. Who does that? I know. Super weird.
That's very specific.
I know. And another thing was I would eat pasta, but no sauce, like just butter and salt.
Sound like my children.
Yeah. But now I'm like, give me everything, And I think it took like just coming out of the comfort zone of like, oh, like maybe I will try that, And I think even now, there's things that I'm like, oh, I don't know if I really like that. And so it's a balance. I'm like, okay, well, I have tried that. I know I don't like it, but it's like every once in a while, like be curious. Just I think it's that curious mindset that like, I'm willing to question myself and then like, ooh, well, I don't know, maybe something has changed or I could try this now. So it's not being so rigid in this is who I am, right? Or if someone introduces a new idea, not getting so like, no, this is the thing that I stand for and I'm not even willing to hear your side.
100%. I think I love that you use the word curiosity. I think curiosity is the most powerful. And I also love that you just mentioned questioning yourself. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of the world right now is very, and social media has really amplified this. I mean, it's really dug this into the ground. I've talked about, oh my gosh, what is the Social Dilemma?
Oh, yes.
I have talked about Social Dilemma on here about 8 times. If you guys have not watched that yet, via my recommendation, please go do that. But I just feel like with social media, it's been easier for people to become more rigid in their ideals, in the way they function, in the way they interact with other people. Mm-hmm. And it's really become this, I'm right, you're wrong. And the way our brain works is exactly that. I mean, our brain loves to be right. And now that we have all this random evidence we found on social media that has to be true, right? We feel very justified and correct. And it's almost...
Wait, everything on the internet is not true?
What? I feel like that's wrong. No. But yeah, I mean, it's so hard because there are people who aren't questioning that stuff, right? The stuff, the articles, the whatever, because people love to create things to get a rise out of people. I mean, the world is full of photoshopped awesomeness. But I really feel like it's become almost like a form of, when I think of real rigidity in belief systems and in perception, I think of mental illness, right? When we're looking through the DSM, the diagnosis is the inability to have critical thinking and the inability to look at other options and perspectives. And I think that that's become a real big challenge, and it's supported by isolation right now. It's supported by being able to only, marinate in your friend groups and not having external diversity. How do we move out of this? How do we create a better self-awareness? Because I think part of that is questioning yourself.
Absolutely it is. I think it's understanding that there is not just right and wrong. There's not just two sides to every story. Like you said, our brains like that because it's a survival instinct, right? Like, don't eat those berries, like they might kill you or they will kill you. 100%. But I think now the way that humans live is very different, but we still have some of these old processes that we like to cling to. And so I think it's opening up your mind to, there are multiple things that can be right. There are multiple truths that can be true at the same time that might conflict with each other, and being curious about that, questioning yourself, questioning your beliefs. Oh my gosh, I feel like this topic is so big. But even, just I'll give an example of this. My boyfriend and I were at an event, and we had some friction, and afterwards, I said, hey, well, like, and I'm not going to go into details, but I was like, hey, what about like this? And he was like, well, what about this? And like, we both had these different perspectives, and I'm like, okay, I like took a breath, and I'm like, you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. Like, we are both right. However, how can we hold compassion for each other in the spaces we're in, and just like come to not even a resolution, just like have compassion for the other person. And then it was like dissolved immediately.
Compassion is kind of like it's the key to dropping those defenses of needing to be correct and needing to be right. And I think that it's hard because, especially right now, there is so much, this is right. And people feel so impassioned and so deeply impassioned about it. And I love that. I love that we're in kind of a movement right now where we're really protecting and standing up for each other. I just feel like, how do we approach this in a way that's actually functional and that is helpful instead of hurtful? Because I think there is a lot of, I know we were talking earlier about cancel culture off this, but there's a lot of inability to love and accept another human because we've gotten away from our humanness. And I think technology has really done that to us. Yeah. So how do we get back to our humanness? How do we find that compassion in not only the little moment to moment boyfriend girlfriend relationships, but also on a bigger scale?
I think it starts with ourselves. Like, you have to have compassion for yourself first. So we were talking earlier too, before we press record, everything starts from within. Like, if we're still hurting inside and we're shaming ourselves or judging ourselves, it's going to show up in other areas of our life, whether we like it or not. And I think we have to like turn in and reflect and have compassion for all of the things in the past that we've done that were bad, or like, when you're trying to fall asleep and you're like, oh, one time 5 years ago, I said this one thing to some person. It's like, okay, thank you, brain. But have compassion for all of those moments and for ourselves. And I think when we start to heal and we start to have compassion and grace for ourselves, we can have greater compassion and grace for other people. So I think that, honestly, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but like compassion and love are the answer. Like, if we just get back to this and we start healing ourselves, like if every person just took accountability and said, I am going to work on healing myself and loving myself as much as I can. Shit, dude, this world would be a whole different place.
100% agree with everything you just said. I feel like we've let love take a backseat to being right.
Mm-hmm.
And we've let love take a backseat to feeling powerful, because I think there's been a lot of things this year that have made most people feel less powerful than usual.
Well, that's interesting you said most people, because I feel like my group of my network, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I took this 2020 and ran with it.
Yes.
Right? So I think it's all depends on your perspective.
It does. I think, it's been a great year for, 2020 was a great year for me in a lot of ways. It was a sobering years in a lot of ways, because of all the transitions. Sorry, there's like a bright blue bird, and I'm very big on symbolism, and I'm like, ooh, he's a communicator. So this is good stuff. This is good stuff. But
we did say that was going to happen.
I know.
We're going to get distracted.
We thought it was going to be a bunny, but but it's a bluebird, and bluebirds are really good for communication. Blue energy is really good for communication.
That's right.
So
throat chakra.
Yeah, throat chakra. So yeah, I have no idea where I was going with that, but I just feel like that love has taken a backseat to being correct and being right. And I feel like, getting back to a place of focusing on the internal instead of the external, because I think we all want to go to battle in a lot of ways. And I think there's that protective energy, and how do we neutralize that? And I don't believe you can neutralize anything in your life without coming inward.
Oh no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. And I think is it Marcus Aurelius, this quote of, you can't control outside events, you can only control your mind. And it's knowing that we give judgment to everything. I mean, you said this earlier, we give judgment to everything that happens to us. So, you and I can have the same experience, and one of us might be like, okay, like no big deal. And the other one might be like, this is the worst. I mean, I don't think either of us would have that, but we all, like, knowing that we all are the judgers of everything happening around us is a powerful concept to understand, because when you can become the observer, if people have done yoga, you might have heard this, or meditation, when you can become the observer and then say like, oh, here's a thought coming in. What do I want to do with this? That's huge, like that. And then like, you're not internalizing it. You're not just taking it in. But if people don't have that, shield up of the observer, then things are just coming in and can affect you. They can affect you in really real ways. I don't want to discount that and make it seem like, oh, that wasn't a thing. But I think if we learn to love ourselves and come from this place of, okay, I know I get to choose every single day how I want to show up, how I'm going to react to things when they happen to me. And then you gain your power back. You stop becoming the victim.
The victim is the exact word that was on my mind as you said that. I was like, it makes me think of, have you read Untethered Soul by Michael Singer?
No, but I know of it.
Gold. It's gold. Highly recommend everybody read it at least once in their lifetime. But in this book, he talks about you're actually the observer of the mind rather than the mind itself. And so if you say stop, you can actually hear yourself say stop. So there's a speaker and a listener within you.
Yeah.
And so I think about that all the time when I'm caught up in my own feels about whatever's going on. If I can just take a good deep breath and then choose. Choose is such a beautiful word for self-awareness. Am I choosing to let this control me? Am I choosing to let this block me from loving this person? Am I choosing to show up as my best self? Am I choosing to show up with compassion? I think if you can come back to that observer standpoint of, am I being the person I want to be? Because we don't ask ourselves that enough.
No, we don't. Yeah. Who do you want to be? Like, I don't care who you are. Like, as of today, great job. If you've achieved a lot or done things, great. If you're not happy, that's great too, because now you have all these lessons and information that you can take, and you can just leave them and then choose something completely different. And I have a tattoo that is a semicolon, and partially means shift. Like, anyone can shift. You can shift today. You can shift in 5 seconds. You can shift tomorrow. Like, we can continually do this through our lives through the lens of, I could just choose whatever I want to do. And there's not like requirements. You don't have to do some intensive work or go to a workshop. I mean, those are very helpful. But at the end of the day, I think real self-care, and I think this is funny because self-care has become like, oh, treat yourself, and like, yes, okay,
buy stuff.
right.
Yeah.
Self-care is also making the tough decisions to step away from the things that are holding you back and choose what you want and what is good for you and that is helping you to heal, become more whole, to feel like you do love yourself, right? Making those tough decisions to who you want to be. But it comes back to that question of, who do I want to be? Who do you want to show up as? And if you don't know the answer to that, then it's hard to say like, oh, okay, I'm going to choose this because why? Why am I doing this? Because everyone else is doing it. And that's what happens when we're unconsciously living. It's like, oh, that whole like keeping up with the Joneses thing or social media, right? It's like, well, I'm going to do this because everyone else is doing it. Why? Do you want to be like that person? You don't know.
You don't even know if they're happy or they're just portraying happiness.
Right.
Social media has really caused a lot of, I think, alignment issues within people, right? We have this comparison and we think we want this life, and what we're not seeing is a lack of some sort, or, you know, or their own personal struggles and issues and things that are coming up for them. And so I always like to do at least 1 week off of social media a month.
Yeah.
If I can get away with it, you know, if I don't have too much going on, but I really like to intend to do that for myself, just to create separation between who am I, what do I want, what's important to me, get back into total alignment with myself, check in on what am I believing about things to be true? What do I want to believe about things to be true? What are the steps I need to take to get there? I think that's so important to come back to yourself, ask those questions, and create some kind of intentional practice around it, because all of this work is like going to the gym. Like you were talking earlier about mental neurological patterns, and those are real, guys. Those are automatic firings in your brain that allow it to perpetuate exact same thoughts, exact same energy, which lead to exact same emotions and actions, right? So when we can start to take our power back by coming inside of ourselves, resetting, creating some level of practice, whatever works for you. And I think for me, it's different every day. Some days I meditate. Some days I can't sit down to meditate. Sometimes I need to go for a run. Sometimes I need to go for a walk. Sometimes I need to write it out. Like it may look different every single day, but this is part of listening to yourself. What is your favorite practice for yourself, for your well-being?
So I, for probably like 10 years, I never did this as a child, but make my bed every single morning, no matter what.
Yeah.
And even if I'm in a hotel, because I'm like, oh, my first win of the day.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
But it's kind of like, oh, like I did this for me, you know? And it's like a subtle way to give back. And that's what I've chose to assign meaning to in my brain. And so I'm like, oh, I'm winning today already. And I'm doing this for me. And like, oh, doesn't that look great? You know what I mean? And it's so silly, right? Some people are probably like, oh my God. But, and I'm not a neat freak, like at all.
Yes.
But it is so like, oh, that's just like a little, like, what a nice little thing. But I love, I try to write at least 3 things I'm grateful for every morning. If I'm in a rush, I'm like, okay, at least write 3. Or if I like don't have time to write it, I'll at least just take 5 seconds to think like, okay, I'm grateful for the sunshine and the amazing bed that I slept in and, you know, whatever I'm about to do today. But I think that's really powerful, that like practice of just like, okay, what am I grateful for? Actually, I was talking to people, my friends yesterday after Run Club, and they're saying glad. So every day, if you can reflect on glad, G is grateful. L is what did you learn? A is what did you accomplish? And then D, what delighted you? Oh, isn't that great? I know.
I love the word delight.
I know.
That's so much more special.
I know. It's so like a joy, delight, like, oh, that makes me feel so great. So I think I'm going to start that at the end of the day. But I think, like you said, there's no right or wrong. I love, I do like a 15-minute meditation. I try to every morning. It's like kind of like you said, I have a whole like bag or toolbox of the things that I know I need to do to take care of my mental health. And I'm like, ooh, like I'm going to pick which ones make sense for me today. But there's a couple of things I just try to do. And you know, but if I don't do them, it's like, I'm not going to beat myself up for it. I used to, you know, like be so rigid or like, I have to do this every day. And I stopped wearing my Apple Watch because I was becoming like a little bit too obsessed with what the watch was telling me in my activity. And I'm like, you know what? We're just going to take this off.
Yes.
And it's a thing. Like even good habits can become bad if we're too tightly controlling over them, right? We have to like breathe and just let ourselves be. We're humans.
That is such an important point that you just made, because I find that when people feel lost or desperate, they cling to those things. And the important piece about all of these tools is that they make you feel better.
Right.
So if you're doing them and you're not getting any relief and you're doing them to do them or to force them, like, you might sit back and ask yourself, what might be a better thing today? Let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. But I woke up and our energy and our energetic body is actually a neutral energy. So as long as we're okay, we're actually on point. You know what I mean?
So a couple of things. One, I would watch like the phrasing of it was a wash or like it was a bad day, because it wasn't. Like, you needed that to reset your energy. So you were really taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any like true bad days or days that are wasted if we're intentional about what we're doing, which I love that you used that word earlier. Like, the intention was, I need to reset today. I need to recover. And then I don't know about if our energy is neutral. I think that we have access to joy and love and excitement if we allow it in. I think a lot of the heaviness comes from society and humanity. And there's a cool chart I'll show you later. Sorry for everyone.
But we'll post it on my Instagram story.
It's a spiral, and it's just showing like the lower levels of like heavier energies of shame and guilt and anger, fear. And then as you go up, it's neutral. And then going up higher is like love and joy and delight and all of these things. I think we can get there. However, it takes time to unlearn a lot of all of the things we've been programmed with by society, by our parents, by school, by religion. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, right? We're not like putting a label on them, but it's just like how human society has evolved over time. And now we're learning like, oh, like maybe some of these things aren't great.
There's a lot that, there's a lot that's developed or has become common practice that's not the best fit, that's not conducive to, we had a phase of positivity bypassing and getting into that space where it's all good, all the time. And people were having that dissonance between how they were feeling and how they quote unquote should be feeling. Right.
And that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. So just hopefully everyone understands.
I'm just thinking just through the history of like how things are progressing of society and what's expected. I think that there's you have to really take what works for you, and you have to take what resonates with you, and you have to make your own decisions. And I think that's all self-awareness. Like, coming back to that idea of self-awareness is making your own choices and making your own decisions about what works best for you and what's in your best and highest good.
Yes, I love that. And it's almost like, I hope I don't 100% agree with anyone or like want to copy anyone 100%.
Right.
It's like, I like to take things from people, and, you make your own, like you create yourself if you choose to, like if you're consciously doing that versus just copying other people because that's what looks cool.
Right.
And I think that's super powerful. And someone said this to me recently. They're like, I'd rather be same-hearted than like-minded or something. So it's basically saying like, our hearts come from the same place of love and compassion, but maybe we have different views on the topic. Just like we just had a different view of like, what is our natural human energy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, but that's okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
There's nothing wrong. And I'm like, I don't know. You might be right. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing is like, I feel like there's no authority on spirituality. There's no authority on how things work. There's just different
interpretations.
Yeah. And I think that when anybody starts to say, this is the truth, this is fact, this is how things have to be done, this is the route to enlightenment, like anytime there's a structure, like the thing is our souls, in my belief, right, aren't rigid. It's just flowing and it's just beautiful. And it's just this loving energy. So when we start to get anything rigid in our lives, that's when we have that heaviness. That's when we have those disagreements. That's when we have all this stuff coming up where we're hitting heads in the world of needing to be right. So I love this conversation because I love hearing everybody's different perspectives and seeing what feels true. Because I'll tell you what, there's things that I used to do 5 years ago that I just would never resonate with me now in regards to even spiritual stuff. Like I used to call myself a healer. I would absolutely never call myself a healer because I think everybody heals on their own. Yeah. I can be a guide for you.
Yeah. Or facilitator.
I can support. I'll hold your hand while we do it. You know, I'll be your cheerleader, but I would never refer to myself in a current day as a healer because I think that takes the power away from the person you're helping.
Yeah.
So it's just little shifts of always growing into who you want to be and always growing into a better version of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful that you shared that. Like literally it warmed my heart because it's true. Like in you, what's so beautiful. And I love this because it's like all the things we're talking about come in full circle.
It is. It's just a little nice wrap up here.
and it's you're able to look back at yourself with compassion and not beat yourself up for it. And it's going to there's probably going to be stuff in 5 years from now that we're like, oh gosh, but that's okay because bless her, like in the nice way, not in the mean Southern way. But no, I think there are always things that we're going to learn. And like our journey's never done. If you are truly committed to learning and growing and being your best self, it's not like you're just going to arrive one day and you're like, da-da, like I did it, I'm enlightened, and just like poof. And
yes.
Like we're always on this journey of continual self-improvement and how can I get better? And I think that if we all start with like compassion and how can I improve and not being attached to what did I mess up? Or what if someone judges me? Or what if I said the wrong thing? Like that's how we become better as individuals and as a society.
How do you decrease attachment? Because I think society programs us for attachment, which is like so opposite that we have these brain wirings that, you go to school and you get good grades and you good grades mean you're doing well in life. And like, there's all these standards that society has set of attachment. I remember I got, I went through all my schooling. I got my master's degree. I get my first job. And I remember like thinking, I thought this would feel better when I got here, I'm doing my life's dream work. And I get there and I'm like, this does not feel how I thought it was going to feel. And I think that's common through, especially for people in their 20s, we call it a quarter life crisis for a reason of just like the undoing phase. How do you help people who feel attached to these outcomes or to specific titles or to specific success points?
I think it's actually kind of tying back to what you said about our souls. Like they're very free flowing. They're not rigid. So first understanding like rigidity is usually the enemy.
Yeah.
Usually there's obviously exceptions, but I think knowing that I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. So I think by knowing that there's no like right answer, we're sold this right dream that you go to school, you go to college, you get married, you buy a house, you have 2.5 kids, and you live happily ever after. Like that's not how it works.
Right. Right.
Like, sorry to burst anyone's bubble. You have to be intentionally choosing these things. And I think that how do you limit attachment is knowing that like everything is temporary. It's all belief, like I know that sounds kind of like I wish I had a better answer, but I think it's all in our beliefs. Like if you're holding on to something so tightly, whether it's a material possession or a belief or a structure of any kind, and you can't let that go, that's going to set you up for failure. And just know, like, it comes back to failure. I didn't mean it like that, but set you up for failure in the sense that you're going to be unhappy. I should say set you up for unhappiness, not failure. It's a better reframe. Yes. But I think knowing, like, it is okay to fail. It is okay to learn, and it is okay to let go. Like, you will be okay.
Yes.
You don't have to hold on to these attachments so tightly. You can step back for a moment.
I think this is like a huge key for a lot of people, and like where they're at in their lives, and just coming back to stepping back. Always like taking one step back, being the observer, asking yourself if these are things, and the things that you're going after are still in alignment with you, are still true to who you are. And what do you believe happens when you get there? And what do you believe about yourself if you don't get there? And I think that if you can really, I'm a huge beliefs person. I wrote an entire book on it. Like that's my, that's my call as well in a lot of ways. So I think if we can assess our beliefs, then we're asking ourselves, like, what are we choosing to see in the world? What is our perception? What have we created a perception out of, by these belief filters that we've set for ourselves? So coming back to what do I believe to be true is one of the most powerful tools anybody can have in their back pocket to say, let me ask myself if this is still working. Let me ask myself if I'm being too rigid. Let me ask myself. And I swear to you, I sit down like once a week with a pen and paper and just kind of write that out of like, where is this at in my life? And what do I believe about it to be true? What would I rather believe about it? What are my, steps to get there? But I think constantly coming back to it, because we get so caught up in the external, we get so caught up in all the other like hubbub that it's so hard to think our own thoughts, to feel our own feelings, and to give ourselves compassion.
It can be hard. Very important. Yeah.
But to find that compassion and come back to that place. So I think being intentional about assessing what it is you believe is such a great key to that doorway of compassion.
It is. And I interjected just because if we tell ourselves, it's so hard to give myself compassion, then it's going to be hard.
Yes.
But once you start doing it, it becomes so much easier. And it's like, oh man, where's this been all my life? Right.
Absolutely.
And then you're like, it's like you find yourself and you're like, oh, I'm so grateful for you. And I'm hugging myself.
Yes.
But it's like, once you step into compassion, it changes everything, and questioning everything, like you said, is like a weekly or monthly practice for people is so important. And there's an amazing quote I love. I think it's by Maya Angelou, but she says, if you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, change the way you think about it.
Absolutely.
That's all we can do at the end of the day. And it's so just realizing this non-attachment, very stoic principles. I love stoicism and applying that. I'm like, let's teach that in school instead.
Yes, right. Please. Anything.
Right. And so, I just think being able to question, knowing that you have worth, no matter what you believe or what you've done or haven't done or want to do, like, you have worth, you have value. And I think also I've recently heard this and it was so beautiful. What if we came here to heal? Like, what if our purpose here, everyone's like, oh, my purpose. And I'm like, what if your purpose is just joy and healing?
Yeah.
What if that's your purpose?
Yep.
How does that change your perspective right now? How does that change your life right now? Not, I gotta go make money to like do what?
Yes.
Like, what are you making the money for? Right. I'm not saying don't make money, but what is the intention? What are you doing? What is the reason behind it? What's the goal here? What if our goals are joy? What if our goals are love?
I love what you just said. I have a lot of people who approach me with that question, like, what's my purpose? What do you think my purpose is? And one of my favorite things to encourage people to think about is like, what if your purpose is just being the highest expression of you? Because I think when you're just in that state of love or in that state of healing or becoming the best, most authentic version of yourself. And those are the people who are really successful. If we want to put a finance thing on it, I see so many people super successful, because they're so them.
Mm-hmm.
And people, they're impacting people positively, literally by existing in this world as the best version of themselves. And so I feel like even within your family, even within your relationships, if you can find that joy, set those new goals up and work on, how do I become me? Like, what attributes make me feel most like me? What things or experiences help amplify that feeling within myself?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if everybody was just doing that? That'd be
I know. That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Like, we would live in a totally different world. And I truly believe that, like, all of the hate and the problems that we have stem from people being hurt on the inside. Like, if you truly boil it down to the root, people being hurt and not having compassion for themselves and for others. And if we start to heal that, then we do truly have a completely different world, you know? And I think there's a lot, and I'm choosing to look at the good and how many people are starting to turn towards healing and starting to turn towards self-reflection and really making these changes within themselves, because that's all we can do at the end of the day.
This conversation's so good. It's so good. And I'm so grateful that you jumped in on this podcast today and we're able to come in and have it in person, because I think it's just a whole different vibe and a whole different energy. If you got like one more parting word of wisdom to share with everybody, what do you think you'd say?
I think, I don't know if I can do it in one word, but one thought.
One thought, yes.
Is you are worthy. You're so worthy to do whatever you want. And self-love and self-care is getting comfortable being uncomfortable and failing and all the things. Like, you can really have whatever you want in life if you're intentionally choosing it. And if you're, just start with self-love. Like, just start there and practice compassion and grace towards yourself. And I promise that will lead you on the journey that you need to or want to go down. So good.
Just, I hope that you guys are hearing this, and I hope that when you're done listening to this, you share it everywhere. How can people find and follow you and support you and connect with you?
Yes, I am at Myrick on all the socials. Well, the ones that I'm on.
Yes.
I don't do TikTok. And lowmyrick.com.
Awesome. You're going to want to make sure you get in with her, connect with her, follow her. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. This was amazing. And I just love this conversation. I love this platform that you have to help others heal and become the best, highest version of themselves. It's really beautiful. I'm very honored to be here.
I just was in a bad mood. I was having a bad day. And I got to this point where I was like, you know what? Today is a wash. Like, we will set up tomorrow to be a better day. How am I going to take care of myself tonight?
Yeah.
And I skipped my workout that morning and I ended up just kind of resting. I watched an episode of Younger, which is one of my favorite
I don't even know what that is. But.
It's like, it's Hillary Duff. It's really good. But it was just like, I let myself do the things that I don't typically do.
Right.
Just out of needing to balance my energy. And the next day I woke up and I was fine. And I think sometimes if we just give ourselves permission to let it be okay or bad, and then know that we're setting ourselves up and giving ourselves permission to have that, because there are days like that. I think our energy is more neutral than anything. A lot of people like strive for just happiness. Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. Take a moment to book a one-on-one session with me or purchase my trainings at NicholeEaton.com. Join the Rock Your Soul Facebook group or follow me on Instagram at NicholeEaton.xo. And if you loved this podcast, don't forget to share it. Thank you.